Hey, I am so glad that you found your way here tonight. I don't know what time it is where you are, or how long you've been trying to settle down. Maybe you've been laying in bed for a while, turning over, adjusting the blanket, checking the time, telling yourself that if you just stop thinking for a minute, sleep will probably come. Or maybe you're not even in bed yet. Maybe you're still up with your phone in your hand, half watching something, half scrolling, not really interested in any of it, just not quite ready to be alone with a quiet room. Either way, I am so glad you're here. For a little while tonight, I am going to keep you company. There isn't anything you need to do for me. There isn't anything you need to prove. And you don't have to be in the right mood for this. You don't have to pay close attention to every word I say. If your mind drifts in and out, that's totally fine. If you listen closely for a while and then start fading in and out, that's totally fine too. I'm just a voice in the room with you, so the night feels a little less empty. Honestly, sometimes that's really all a person needs. A little bit of company, a little steadiness, just some sense that somewhere out there, another person is still awake and speaking gently into the dark. I don't know what kind of day you've had. It might have been a pretty difficult one. It might have been a pretty lonely one. It might have been long in a way that leaves a sort of dull ache behind, even if nothing dramatic happened. Some days don't really wound you in any obvious way, they just wear you down a little. They leave you with that tired feeling that settles in after the noise is over. When the errands are done and the messages stop and the house gets quiet and there is nothing left to distract you from yourself. That's often when loneliness gets louder. Not always because something terrible happened. Sometimes it's just the hour. Sometimes it's the darkness outside the window. Sometimes it's just the fact that everything slows down at night. And once everything slows down, you notice what's missing. You notice the empty side of the room. You notice the silence between the little household sounds. You notice that nobody is expecting anything from you in this moment. And for some reason, I can feel comforting and sad at the same time. Night really has a way of doing that to people. It makes small things feel bigger. It makes unfinished thoughts wander back in. A conversation you barely thought about at noon suddenly wants to replay itself over and over at midnight. A worry that seemed completely manageable earlier in the day starts feeling heavier once the lights are low and the room is gone still. And even when you know that's what night does, even when you know your mind is not always the most reliable storyteller after dark, that does not necessarily stop the feeling from arriving. So if tonight feels a little lonely or heavier than you'd like it to, I just want to say that I understand that nights like this are very, very real. But for tonight, at least, you do not have to sit through it completely on your own. Okay, if you're already in bed, get settled however you need to. Pull the blanket up, kick one foot out from under it if that's what makes you comfortable. Turn over the pillow until you find the cooler side. If the sheet's twisted around your ankle, which happens to me every night, shake it loose. And if you're sitting in a chair or on the couch and listening there first, that's all right too. You don't need to hurry because I mentioned sleep. A lot of people need a little company before they can even start thinking about rest. I've always thought that that was, I guess, one of the strangest things about being a person. It's how often we present the end of the day as something simple, as if you just finish dinner, brush your teeth, get in bed, close your eyes, and drift off like somebody in a movie. In real life, though, the end of the day is usually much messier than that. There's a glass somewhere you meant to bring back to the kitchen. There are clothes on a chair that didn't make it to a drawer. Maybe there's a lamp and it's still on in another room. Maybe you told yourself you would answer somebody tomorrow because you just didn't have the energy tonight. Maybe there's a few dishes in the sink. Maybe there's an email you've been avoiding. Maybe your thoughts are still walking around long after the rest of you got tired. That's a lot more normal than people admit. There's something oddly comforting, I think, about admitting that the day doesn't always end neatly. Most lives don't. Most people are not falling asleep at perfect peace in perfectly tidy rooms with perfectly resolved emotions. Most people are just doing their best to bring themselves down gently from the day, and they're trying to become quiet enough to rest. Maybe that's why it helps to hear another person's voice at night. It breaks the feeling that you're the only one still awake, the only one thinking, the only one whose day didn't wrap up as cleanly as it was supposed to. Well, you are not the only one. Somewhere there is a man in an apartment rinsing out a coffee mug, maybe one he shouldn't have used this late. Somewhere a woman is folding laundry from the dryer because she forgot about it and doesn't want it to wrinkle overnight. Somewhere somebody is standing barefoot in a kitchen under the light of the stove, drinking a glass of water and staring out into the yard at absolutely nothing in particular. And somewhere somebody has a television on low, just so the room doesn't feel so hollow. Somewhere somebody is driving home much later than they meant to. And somewhere someone else is just beginning a shift that will keep them awake until sunrise. The world looks quieter at night, but it's definitely not empty. And I've always liked that thought. When I was younger and I couldn't sleep, I used to find small comforts in the signs that life was still going on somewhere outside my room. A car passing, its headlights moving against the wall for just a second. The distant sound of a train, if the night was still for it. A porch light left on at the neighbor's house. And even that sound of a refrigerator turning on in the kitchen, it has this kind of reassurance to it. The world is not gone. It's just a little quieter. Maybe that's what I'm trying to be for you tonight. One more quiet sign that the world is still here. One more light on in the distance. One more voice saying, without a big dramatic speech about it, that the night does not belong entirely to loneliness. If your mind has been restless tonight, it doesn't need to stop all at once. I think some people get frustrated with themselves because they approach sleep like it's a task, something they should be able to do on command. But the mind doesn't always respond well to force. It settles better when it feels like it has permission to loosen its grip gradually, like a room becoming darker, one lamp at a time. So we're not going to force anything. We are just going to sit together for a while and let the edges of the night just soften a little. There's a certain hour, especially on lonely nights, where the world starts to feel very, very far away. If you've ever been awake at 1 or 2 in the morning, you probably know what I mean. It's not exactly fear, and it's not always sadness. It's just that peculiar sense that everyone else has gone somewhere and you're not allowed to follow at the moment. Everyone has disappeared behind their own front doors, into their own bedrooms, into their own relationships and routines and private lives, and you are left standing just outside all of that, hearing the muffled hum of a life you're not inside. That feeling can be hard to describe, I think. And sometimes it's not even about literally being alone. A person can live with other people and still feel lonely at night. A person can have friends and family and messages waiting for them in the morning and still feel that empty quiet once the day drops away. Loneliness is not always the same thing as isolation. Sometimes it's just that feeling that for a little while, there is no one right there beside the version of you that comes out after dark. The tired version, the uncertain version, the version that has stopped performing for the day and is left sitting with whatever is true. That's often the most honest version of us. And honestly, I think that version deserves kindness. A lot of kindness. Not a lecture, not a productivity tip, not a forced attempt to turn every difficult feeling into a lesson. Just kindness. If I could offer one thing tonight, I'd want it to be that. A kind presence. The sort of presence that doesn't interrupt the room with big demands or too much brightness. The kind that just settles in and makes the space feel less harsh. Maybe that's why late night radio used to mean so much to people. There was something really deeply human about being awake at an odd hour and hearing a stranger's voice drifting in through the darkness, sounding calm and steady, as if the world had not entirely shut its doors for the night. A good late night voice doesn't crowd you. It doesn't act like it has all the answers. It just stays with you long enough for the room to stop feeling so empty. That's the spirit I want this to have. Not advice, not answers, just company. There are all kinds of lonely nights. Some come after heartbreak. Some come after grief. Some arrive because a season of life changed and the mind has just not caught up yet. Some come after moving somewhere new, or after losing a routine, or after one of those ordinary days that simply leaves you feeling unmoored for reasons you can't explain if somebody asked. And some nights are lonely for no clear reason at all. You're just more aware of the shape of your own life once everything gets quiet. I don't need to know which kind of night this is for you, because it is more than enough that you are here. I think people often underestimate how meaningful it is to be gently accompanied. We tend to treat it like a small thing because it doesn't fix the whole problem. But not every moment needs to fix the whole problem. Sometimes all that matters is that the next 10 minutes feel softer than the last 10 did. Sometimes all that matters is that your breathing eases, that your jaw unclenches, that your thoughts stop circling quite so tightly around the same point. Sometimes all that matters is hearing a voice that sounds like it means well. I hope mine does. I hope it sounds like this is a place to set your thought down for a while. You know, there are places in the world that seem made for people who are awake later than they intended to be. They are not glamorous places usually. They're small, ordinary places, diners, laundromats, all night gas stations, hospital waiting rooms, empty roads, quiet lobbies, the kind of place where nobody expects much from you, and no one is surprised to find you there carrying the unfinished weight of a day. I've always had a soft spot for diners, especially the kind that stay open very late or all through the night. There's something just really comforting about them. The lights are always a little too bright from the outside, which means they look like a shelter where the rest of the street has gone dark. The windows are large, and from the parking lot, you can usually see the shine of the counter and the coffee pots and the rows of booths. Maybe there's an old sign out front with a few letters, not quite as bright as the others. Maybe the pavement is still wet from rain and reflecting all that yellow and white light back up at the building. Maybe there's only one or two cars parked outside. The whole place has that feeling of being awake on purpose, while the rest of the world has gone off to sleep. I'd like to take you to a place like that for a while. Not in some formal guided imagery way, just a way that a story takes you somewhere, and then you're ready to leave the room you're in just for a bit. So imagine a quiet road at night, not a busy highway, just a road that is emptied out for the evening. A few storefronts along it are already dark. A pharmacy sign is still glowing at the end of the street. There's a traffic light changing for nobody. The air outside has that nighttime coolness to it, the kind that makes indoor light look warmer than it did during the day. And there on the corner, there is a diner. It isn't trendy. It doesn't have a clever menu or fashionable lighting. It's just a diner in the old, dependable sense of the word. Chrome around the edges of the counter. A bell over the door that gives a soft little ring when someone comes in. A floor that has been mopped 1,000 times. A line of booths with vinyl seating. Clean, but slightly worn. A coffee machine humming in the background. A pie case near the register, probably with one or two slices left that nobody will buy tonight. And inside, it's nice and warm. Not overheated, just warm enough that the night loosens its grip a little when you step through the door. Behind the counter, there's a cook who has been there long enough not to rush. He moves with the easy pace of someone who knows this hour well. A waitress, maybe in her 50s, maybe a little older, carries a coffee pot like an extension of her arm. She has that kind of face that can tell when a person wants conversation and when a person just wants to be left in peace. There's no false cheerfulness to her. She doesn't need to impress anybody. She simply knows how to keep a place like this feeling human. There are a few people inside. At the counter sits a truck driver in a cap, hands wrapped around a mug. He's not in a hurry. He's watching the little TV mounted in one corner, though he doesn't seem very interested in what's going on. A nurse just came off shift and slid into a booth with the slow, careful tiredness of someone who's been on her feet for 12 hours and is relieved to be nowhere urgent. A young man near the window has a plate in front of him and a book open, though he's been on the same page for quite a while. Someone in the back booth is half hidden by the high seat, wearing a sweatshirt, staring out at the rain on the glass. Nobody in the diner needs a reason for being awake. That's one of the nice things about it. Nobody asks. No one says, "Hey, what are you doing out this late?" Or "Why haven't you gone home?" Or "What's wrong? You've been sitting here for an hour." The place simply accepts that human beings are sometimes awake in the middle of the night, carrying private things, needing warmth and a coffee, and a little time before they go back out into the dark. And look, there is a booth open just for you. It's along the window, not too near the door, where it's quiet. The seat gives a little when you sit down. The tabletop is clean. You've got a napkin dispenser, a little metal sugar holder, and a bottle of ketchup sits right in the middle of the table. There's a small scratch in the laminate near the edge. The overhead light is steady and soft enough that it doesn't ask anything of your eyes. The waitress comes by with a menu, though this is the kind of place where the menu is almost besides the point. What matters is that she sets down a glass of water without making a production of it. The ice clinks softly. A minute later, she brings coffee or tea, or maybe something sweet and warm, if that suits the night better. She doesn't stand there waiting for you to act cheerful. She just makes sure that you have what you need and then gives you your room. Outside, a little rain taps on the window. Not a storm, just a steady rain. The kind that turns the parking lot glossy and blurs the lights out on the street. Every so often, a pair of headlights pass and glides across the diner windows before moving on. And inside, there's the low murmur of things continuing. A plate set gently on the counter, the hiss from the grill, a spoon stirring in a mug, the cook opening and closing the refrigerator door behind the line, the faint clink of ceramic, the waitress asking the truck driver if he wants a refill, and him answering with the casual friendliness of someone who has been asked that question 1,000 times in 100 small places. No one is trying to impress anyone in here. No one is trying to become a better person before morning. They're simply existing together under warm lights. And maybe that's all we need sometimes. Not a transformation, not a revelation, just a room where being tired is allowed, where being a little worn down is ordinary, where nobody looks at your face and demands that you explain yourself. You sit there for a while. The warm mug rests between your hands or near them on the table. You don't have to drink much of it. The booth is comfortable in that modest, practical way that doesn't draw any attention to itself. The window beside you holds the dark outside, and it keeps the outside world at a slight distance. You can see it, but you don't have to be in it right now. The nurse in the other booth eats slowly, with that faraway look people get when their mind has not fully left work yet. The truck driver has finally started paying more attention to the television, though it's hard to tell if he really cares or just likes having movement in the corner of his eye. The young man with the book closes it and lets it sit face down on the table. And a new customer comes in, bringing a faint swirl of cool air and rain smell, and then settles at the counter with a tired nod. I think that's what makes a place like this comforting, just the lack of drama. Nobody is asking for anything large. Nobody is unveiling their life story. It's just people passing through the same quiet hour together. And I think that there is tremendous relief in that. We spend so much of life feeling expected to perform some version of ourselves. Even with people who love us, there are often roles to step into, responses to give, energy to supply. But at a place like this, at an hour like this, it asks very, very little. It leaves room for the softer parts of a person, the unguarded parts, the tired parts. I want tonight to feel a little like that for you. A place that asks very little. A place where you can just exist for a while. Maybe by now your room is feeling different than it did when this started. Not completely different. I'm not trying to oversell it. But maybe the edges are less sharp. Maybe the silence is not so heavy. Maybe the bed feels more like somewhere to rest than somewhere to wrestle with your thoughts. That's enough. That's actually more than enough. If there are still things waiting for you tomorrow, they can wait a little longer. They probably always were going to. Most of the pressure we feel at night is pressure borrowed from a future version of ourselves. Morning will have its own mind, its own pace, its own capacities. Night does not need to solve morning's problems. Night only needs to become night. A place where the body lets down some of its guard. A place where the hands unclench. A place where the mind, even if it doesn't go quiet all at once, stops pacing quite so hard at the door. Back in the diner, the waitress has dimmed one light near the pie case. The place is a little quieter now. The nurse is paid and gone. The truck driver remains, still wrapped around his mug. The cook wipes down part of the counter, not because it needs it urgently, but because that's what people do in late night places. They keep small order while the dark hours pass. Rain keeps moving down the windows. There's something almost hypnotic about that. Water sliding down glass while the inside stays warm. It gives your thoughts something gentle to follow without needing to hold on to a single point. Maybe you lean back in the booth a little more now. Maybe your shoulders have dropped. Maybe your eyes are not working as hard. Even if you're still wide awake, maybe your wakefulness has become less lonely. And that matters. The waitress comes by once more, not to interrupt, only to check the table. She takes the nearly empty water glass and returns with a fresh one. She doesn't ask unnecessary questions. She just gives a small nod, the kind that says everything is all right here. And then she moves on. That nod would mean a lot on some nights. Not because it fixes anything, but because it carries no judgment at all. Everything is all right here. Sometimes the most comforting thing in the world is a place or person that does not act surprised by your tiredness. I think that's one of the feelings I want this channel to hold. Not surprise, no disappointment, just a steady welcome. If you need somewhere to belong, somewhere to bring your tired mind at the end of the day, I'd like this to be that place. Not because life outside these videos isn't real, not because listening to a voice on the internet is the answer to every lonely night, no. But because human beings really do need small harbors. We need places where we can drop our guard just a little bit. We need voices that sound as though they are speaking to us, not performing at us. We need reminders, sometimes, that gentleness still exists. I hope this can be one of those reminders. The diner is beginning to feel even quieter now. The television has been turned down. The truck driver finally leaves some bills on the counter, puts on his jacket, and heads back out into the rain. The bell over the door gives its little ring, and then the place is still again. The cook disappears in the back for a moment. Somewhere, a coffee cup is set into a saucer with that soft ceramic sound that always seems louder in a quiet room. And your booth is still warm. The drink in front of you has cooled a little, and the rain keeps going. There isn't anything for you to do. There isn't anywhere you need to be for the next little while except right here, in this booth, under these lights, while the night passes outside the window and the room holds steady around you. You don't have to keep following the details so closely now. The diner will stay here. The road outside will stay wet and dark. The waitress will keep moving at her unhurried pace, and somewhere behind the counter, coffee will keep warming on the burner. If your mind wants to drift, go ahead and let it drift. If it wants to imagine the quiet sound of forks and mugs and rain against the window, that's enough. If it wants to return to your own room and notice the fan, the low hum of the air conditioner, or the weight of the blanket over your legs, that's enough as well. Nothing important will be missed. That's the nice thing about places like this. They don't demand your full attention. They simply stay with you while you grow tired. And maybe that's all I should do now too. Just stay with you while you grow tired. I'll keep talking a little longer, but more softly now. Sometimes when the day has been too much, sleep doesn't arrive like a curtain falling. It arrives in small permissions. The shoulders ease. The jaw lets go. The space behind the eyes softens. Thoughts stop presenting themselves with the same urgency. The room becomes less like a place where you are stranded, and more like a place where you are being held for the night. It may already be happening, or it may happen in 10 minutes. There's no need to measure it too carefully. In the diner, another customer comes in and sits near the far end of the counter. There's the low murmur of a brief conversation, the kind that belongs to tired people and doesn't need to travel far. The bell over the door settles. The rain is softening now, becoming finer, more like whispers on the windows rather than tapping. Outside, the road shines under the streetlight, and inside, the warmth remains exactly where it was. Your booth remains all yours. The glass of water catches the overhead light. The tabletop is smooth beneath your forearm. The seat supports you without asking anything. Nobody in here needs a better explanation than simple tiredness. There's comfort in ordinary mercy. In a refill offered quietly. In a room that stays lit. In a voice that doesn't rush you. If your eyes are closed now, that's all right. You do not need a visual picture of any of this anymore. You know enough. A warm booth, rain on the window, distant kitchen sounds, a few people quietly moving through the same dark hour. No pressure, no performance, just a place to rest for a while. And if your eyes are still open, maybe they're heavier now. Maybe the room you're actually in has started to feel a little gentler. Maybe the dark beyond your own window is not quite so severe. Somewhere, after all, there is still a light on. Somewhere, there is still a voice. Somewhere, someone is keeping the quiet company. And that matters so much more than we'd like to admit. So for tonight, let the night be simple. Let the room be what it is. Let tomorrow stay where it belongs. You've carried enough for one day. The diner is still there. The rain is still here. The warm light is still here. And I'm still here too. Not asking questions, not asking for anything back. Just keeping the room company until it feels easier to sleep. You might notice now that thoughts come and go with less insistence. They may still appear, but they don't all need a response. Some can pass like headlights on a wet road, visible for a moment and then gone. Some can blur and fade like reflections in the diner window. Some don't need to be understood tonight at all. There is a kind of peace in not chasing every thought to its end. In the same way, there's a kind of peace in not finishing every feeling before bed. Some feelings will remain partially folded, like clothes left on a chair until morning. And that's all right. Morning has a way of changing the scale of things. What feels impossibly large at 2 a.m. sometimes starts looking manageable in daylight. Not because your problems become unreal, but because light helps. Rest helps. A little distance helps. For now, rest is enough of a goal. Nothing grand, just rest. The waitress wipes down the empty booth across from yours. The sound is soft and rhythmic. The cook returns, checks something on the stove, and the low kitchen sounds continue in the background like steady breathing. The television is still on, but turned down far enough that it has become a flicker more than a program. Outside, the rain grows even gentler, almost finished. If you listen closely, the whole diner has the feeling of a place exhaling. Maybe your body is doing the same. Maybe your chest feels looser. Maybe the bed beneath you feels heavier in a good way. Maybe your hands are no longer holding on to quite so much. Stay there. That's good. There's nowhere else you need to go tonight. The booth stays warm. The night stays quiet. The light remains on over the table. And if you fall asleep before any of this ends, nothing important will be lost. The diner will still be there, right in the back of your mind. The road will still shine outside. The rain will still rest against the window. The people inside will keep their quiet company. The waitress will move gently from table to table, and the cook will keep watch over the warm kitchen. And somewhere, a mug will be filled again. A place like that doesn't vanish because you stop paying attention to it. It simply keeps holding its shape for you. I like to think some voices can do that too. They can keep holding a shape. A calm shape. A steady shape. A shape that says the night is survivable, and sometimes even soft. So if sleep is near now, I hope it comes quietly. And if it still takes a little while, that's all right too. I'll stay with you a bit longer in this low-lit place where nobody expects too much and the rain is fading from the windows. The booth is still comfortable. The mug is still warm enough. The room is still so kind. And beyond the glass, the dark has lost a lot of its edge. It's only night. Just night. A long one, perhaps. A lonely one, perhaps. But still, it's only night. And nights do pass. The waitress turns one more light lower near the front. The pie case glows softly in the dimmer room. The bell over the door is still. The coffee smell lingers in the warm air. The whole diner seems to settle deeper into itself, holding the quiet with both hands. And maybe your room is doing the same now. Maybe the corners of it feel less empty. Maybe the bed feels more welcoming. Maybe the silence is no longer silence in quite the same way, because now it contains a little company. That's enough for tonight. More than enough. If your thoughts begin to drift apart now, let them. If the story blurs a little, let it blur. If all that remains is the sense of warm light, rain on a window, and someone nearby keeping watch while you rest, that is plenty. The diner will stay open. The coffee will stay warm. The road outside will keep shining softly under the streetlight. And somewhere, not far away at all, there will still be a light on for anyone who needs it. So settle in. Let the room hold you. Let the night soften. And when you're ready, let sleep come find you exactly where you are. I'm here for just a little while longer. The diner's quiet. The rain is nearly gone. The lights are low. Everything is all right here. Everything is all right here. Everything is all right here. Sleep if you can. Rest if you can't. Either way, you don't have to face the night entirely alone. Good night.